Hey everybody, how we doing today? So let me ask you something. When someone asks you, hey Ray, do you play guitar? How do you answer that? Do you say, oh yeah, oh but I'm just a beginner? Or do you say, yeah I do? All right. So for a lot of us, we say, yes, but I'm only a beginner. Way for far too long. Okay? I'm going to talk about 3 things today that, for me, allowed me to drop that, hey, but I'm only a beginner. And when these 3 things happen to you, and when you discover them and master them, you're a guitar player, okay? Now, the last thing you might find interesting, because it's not something that you hear about. I don't even know if they teach it when you go for guitar lessons. I don't know if it's even talked about, but it's so important. And when it happens, believe me, you're a guitar player. So stick around and find out what that is, all right? Let's get going right now. All right, so I'm going to say again that most of us consider ourselves to be beginners long after we really should, okay? And there's a lot of reasons for that. Most of it is, well, self-doubt, self-confidence issues. Some of it is, like it was in my case, I didn't really have anybody to play along with. So I was always on my own playing, and therefore there was no one to constantly say, hey, you're sounding better. So it was only when I went out here and there that someone may or may not notice and then may or may not take the time to tell me. So I was really kind of always wondering where I stood with this. But looking back, it was pretty obvious. Now, I've made a video before of a few things that start to change as you grow up in the guitar learning cycle here. As your journey goes on and on, you progress accordingly. And so I've been releasing little videos of little things about how we play our chords, how we play our scales and notes, and little things like that that you'll find that intermediate players do that or don't do anymore, or vice versa, that beginners do or don't, you see? And here are 3 more, okay? So let's talk about the first one. And the first 2 are in no particular order. And we're going to call it, or there is a word for it, but we're going to call it arpeggios. What's an arpeggio? Well, look, there's a whole guitar official theory, explanation, and definition of an arpeggio, but in basic layman's terms that fits you and I, it basically just means playing notes within a chord or playing a broken chord or whatever, okay? So what we're doing is we're actually fingering the chord, but we're only playing certain notes or strings of that chord. And the amount of strings that we use is determined on the chord itself and how many strings the chord uses. So for example, if we took a C major shape, we know that we have to strum 5 strings, numbers 1 through 5, on the guitar to make that an official C with our proper fretting, okay? Now, that means, as an arpeggio, we can pick any of these strings individually, or notes individually. We can strum them or we can pick them. And when you combine them both together, you get a really professional sounding voicing. And I used to watch people, like when I'd go out and I would, see someone pull their guitar out and think to myself, oh, I wonder if they're any good. And they would sit there and go something like, And I'd think, oh boy, this guy knows what he's doing, or she's pretty good, right? Okay. All they're doing is arpeggiating. Now, if you look closely, this hand doesn't change. So again, we've got those 5 strings of the C chord, Now we can play in any order any of those 5 strings that are in that C chord. And what I don't want you to do is go back in this video and try to memorize which strings that I'm picking within that C chord or within that G chord or in the D chord, okay? Don't do it. It will put you in an asylum, all right? That's what you get when you practice. And this becomes something that we're going to talk about later. This becomes sort of a feel thing, and that you just know that when you want something trebly, you're going to go up to the first and 1 or 2 strings. And when you want to play something a little bassy within that chord, you're going to hang around here. When you want to mix the both, okay? And the possibilities are endless. You can strum, you can pick bass, you can pick treble, you can pick bass and treble, you can strum, you could do all kinds of things. And this will elevate your sound 3 or 4 floors, no problem, right off the bat. Now again, you're limited by the strings in the chord. So a D chord, for example, you've only got the 4 strings to pick. C chord, you got 5. G, you got all 6, right? E chord, you got all 6. A minor, you'd have 5, and so on. So however many strings are in the original open chord are the amount of strings that you can arpeggiate within that chord to get all kinds of different sounds, right? So this is taking you to another level right off the bat. So give it a try. It won't sound great the first time, just like anything else. You're going to have to get used to it, right? But believe me, it's not hard. And once you do, you're adding a whole new dimension to your chord playing and your open chord playing. You can even do it, you can arpeggiate bar chords, you can arpeggiate open chords. So it's completely, the playground is wide open. So that leads us to number 2. And this technique is something that is, in my opinion, the backbone of sounding good with your fretboard, okay? And it is, well, it's a volume control and a tone knob all in one. And it comes in the form of our right hand. And it's called palm muting. Now, at first, when someone said, "Hey man, do you know how to palm mute?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they kind of showed me a little bit about what it was. I'm like, that sounds so stupid. But of course, fast forward 3 years, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. All right, so let me explain what palm muting is. So when we play chords, right, we're told, and rightly so, get that pick, strum down through the strings, let them ring out. Hear that? Oh, that G chord. Oh, that C chord. It rings out so nicely. And that's great. But remember, when we're also beginners, we don't have much in the way of pick control at this point. So we're just sort of, well, a lot of us are bashing away. Right? Because, again, I've said this before, as humans, we think, okay, if I'm a little sloppy on the G and the C, if I play loud and fast, people won't notice, it'll cover it up. Really, it amplifies it, but that's okay. That's not what we're talking about really today. So, palm muting is a way to sort of control your fretboard, control the strings. So up until now, all we've ever learned about is picking the strings and strumming the strings and making them really sound as loud as we possibly can. Well, now we're kind of taking the approach of, oh, wait a minute here. The official word is, I want to dampen these strings. I want to dampen the voicing that's coming from this chord. And we do that using palm muting. And palm muting is that fleshy part, the side of our palm. Now, some people do use, and at times you will use more of a straight-on palming approach, but usually, because you're usually strumming at the same time, you'll use the fleshy side right here, the underside inner palm of your hand. And what you're doing is this. So here's our G chord, unmuted. Now, I want to lower the volume of that. Now, there's two ways we can do that. We can decrease our touch, or we can continue to strum the same way, but implement some palm muting. Now, you hear the volume go down? Now, I can control both the volume and how much sustain I want. How much I want the guitar to ring out, okay, after I finish playing a chord. Right? If I just want short, choppy, right? I can do that. What you're hearing behind the scenes, and this works pick or no pick, I'm going to do no pick in a second, is I'm going to now play those same chords without the pick hitting the string. So you can hear what the palm is doing on the fretboard, right? So check it out. You hear that? Okay, so that's without picking. That's just, I'm really just following my picking motion, and I'm brushing my palm over the strings, and I'm using, again, through practice and something that we're going to talk about next, I'm using a couple of elements to determine how loud I want things to sound out, okay? And that's palm muting. Now, we can use this in various ways. Sometimes we can, maybe we just palm mute the ups and we let the downs ring out. Sometimes I just want to lower something in a part of a song when I'm singing it. And then I let the chords ring out when I'm not singing. So there's all kinds of ways we can do that. But all it is a subtle touching of the string with the bottom outside of our palm. It's called palm muting. Play around with it. This adds all kinds of texture, right? So this allows us to really dig in. So we don't have to worry, like when the adrenaline's flowing and we're sweating and we're just giving it, okay? Instead of having to back off and worry about how hard we're hitting the strings, we could just implement the palm, right? And look, here's how I'm strumming. See, you don't know that because I'm palming it. But look, without the palm, I can go right down to like almost nothing, and I can go right down to, with this hand as well, to make it like a chuck. All right, so give it a try. Palm muting. It will take your strumming to yet another level. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about, and for me, this was it, along with these two. These are the three most important things that I think lifted me out of the doldrums of beginnership. Look, and this thing is not talked about. No, I don't hear anybody talk about it. I mean, I don't know, and if they do, they don't dwell on it, and it really should be. It's a two-parter, meaning there's kind of two components in this one thing, and it's simply known as, to me, touch and feel. All right, one of them's physical, and one of them really is more mental, the way I use the word feel, okay? Now, it kind of sounds dirty, too. Touch and feel. Ooh, touch and feel. All right, so the touch part comes with, hand in hand with palm muting, okay? It comes with how we play the strings. It's all about pick control and how hard we strum that. Now, as a beginner, you're not going to have any touch, so don't worry about it. This is something that is going to come. The more comfortable, the more we play, the faster it will come. If it comes quicker, hey, count your blessings. But this is something that comes naturally with the amount of hours you put in. Like that old saying, 10,000 hours to really really hone your craft in whatever you decide to do, right? Okay, so when you get, say, from hour 6,000 and on, this might creep into your repertoire, and for others it might creep in at 1,000 hours, and some not until 12,000 hours. But touch is so important because that's how we determine everything. How, without the use of palm muting, we can determine how the volume is on our guitar, how loud we want our chords to be. We just want to, that's it, just, there, that's touch. Okay, it's how we fret our chords. We don't have to get right in there like a vice and squeeze that fretboard like we do as beginners, okay, which leads to a bit of uncomfort feeling or pain in our wrist and the back of our hands. We don't have to do that. It's all about touch. We feel the strings just enough to fret them down, make a note, and we let this pick just do its job. Now, you'll also find that the pick, after a while, doesn't move around like it used to. Remember when it used to? Like when you started, next thing you know, the pick is upside down and it's sticking out like this. Okay, that still is going to happen, but you're going to be so confident as you move forward that you correct that on the fly, okay? Everybody's pick moves around to some extent, right? But it's the ability to correct it that you don't have as a beginner. But overall, it'll do that less as you gain more of a touch, right? More of a touch for your pick, more of a touch for your fretting, more of a touch for the way you play your strings. Comfort level is there, you're confident, all that stuff. That's touch, right? When you add touch to these other techniques that I showed you, like arpeggiating, a little bit of palm muting, right? Now you're developing a sound. Now you're developing a professional sound with your guitar, right? Now the other part of the touch is feel. Touch and feel, touch and feel, okay? The feel I look at as being more mental. Now, it's hard for me to explain a lot of this stuff because this really is a natural thing that occurs. Feel will replace things like a rigid strumming pattern, because what'll happen is you will be doing a strumming pattern for a song, but your feel will take over and you'll realize you only have to strum not as much. So for example, feel takes over. Okay, so you're still strumming the G and you're still keeping a 4/4, but it's sounding a little different because you're incorporating some feel. When you are playing to, say, a blues progression, a 12-bar blues or something, feel replaces the need to count and be so rigid. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You feel when the chord is going to change. You know it's coming. You have a sense of how fast you're playing it. Here we go. You just feel it. I'm not counting. I'm just going by feel. Now, could I be off a split second? Absolutely. That's the whole thing when you feel things, right? You often hear this in the recording world. Oh yeah, Pro Tools, everything is so rigid. My DAW, I go in there, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes we just want to mic the band on the floor, you'll hear a musician say, and when you feel, hey, you're a little bit off time, out of time, but that sounds good, it sounds great. And it's been proven that the human ear reacts better when things aren't perfectly structured and rigid. So look, feel can replace things like the count, the strumming pattern, whether or not when you are arpeggiating, which strings to play. Okay, I'm not going to sit there and go play 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. No, feel takes over. Maybe that's why it's not talked about, because there's really no official way to put this in a book, right? And say, okay, follow these steps and you'll have feel. No, you get feel on your own, and everybody gets it at a different time and in a different way. But feel is the combination of your hands, the way they touch and the way they play your guitar, the way your mind thinks along with your hands. So feel tends to, and sometimes you have to be careful, especially if you're in a band or you're recording, because with too much feel, you can get out of your time or rhythm. But when you're playing on your own, man, there is nothing like feel. When you see one person who's into it, who's feeling their guitar as they're singing and playing a song, if you were to meter them, you'd probably find that they went off, they went out of tune, they went out of pitch, they went out of key, whatever, or out of rhythm. But you don't notice it because the feel presents an overall package. I hope that makes sense. I just hope that makes sense. So, look, so important, touch and feel. It's never talked about. It's so important because this is like putting the bow around everything else. Okay? You can play your chords, you can play your bar chords, you can play your triads, you know your scale, you can play them bing, bang, boom. But when you add touch and feel, that just sort of pulls everything together and in your way, your style, your sound. All right. Well, look, I hope this makes sense to you. And if you have any comments or questions, absolutely, please send a note and also join me on my lives. If you are not a subscriber and you hit subscribe, then you'll be notified whenever I go live multiple times a week. And you can ask me questions then, too, about it, right? So, look, these three things above all, for people that have been playing guitar for a year or more, and maybe even 4 years and more, these three things, when I incorporated them into my repertoire, it was night and day. Okay, so I urge you to do the same thing, and I'm sure that they will work for you. And not only that, I'm also sure that this will help you remove that, hey, I'm only a beginner tag off of your tagline. All right, thanks again for your ongoing support, and we'll see you soon. And always remember, just play your guitar, because that's how you get better. All right, bye for now.